This is the Book of Enoch, and it contains a story that changes everything you know about evil and where it comes from, what angels actually are, who the Nephilim of the ancient world really were, and why the entire earth had to be wiped out by a flood. It was all banned from the Bible. Today you're going to find out why. I want you to see what the world looked like when it was already gone, because understanding the Nephilim is the reason everything else in this story makes sense. The Watchers had children with the women on earth. Those children were the Nephilim. The word Nephilim in Hebrew, it comes from naphal, which translates to fall. The fallen ones, or those who make others fall. Both translations work, because these things weren't meant to exist. Not human, not angel, something in between. So what were the Nephilim? They were the giants. The text describes them as enormous, physically overwhelming in a way no human could match. Stronger, and faster, and built for violence. But worse than their size was their hunger. They consumed everything humans produced. Until it was gone. When the food ran out, they turned on the humans. They ate them. When the humans weren't enough, they went after the animals. When the animals were gone, they turned on each other. It was giants eating giants. The earth was drowning in blood. Not just human wickedness. Supernatural violence from creatures that nothing on earth could stop. And this is where the Book of Enoch connects directly to something you have heard your entire life. Most people grew up thinking about Noah's Ark as a story about human sin. God looked at the wickedness of man and decided to start over. And that is what Genesis says on the surface. But the Book of Enoch tells you what really happened. The reason the earth had become so corrupted, the reason the screams of the dying were reaching heaven, was not just because people were making bad choices. It was because of what was walking among them. The Nephilim had filled the earth with violence. The Watchers had gave humanity weapons and dark knowledge before they were ready for any of it. The natural world, the way God had designed things to work, was being torn apart from every direction at once. From 1 Enoch 9, the archangels observe the chaos on earth, caused by the fallen angels, and intercede on behalf of humanity by bringing their case before God. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works taught by Azazel. The souls of those who have died are crying out, and their voices have reached the gates of heaven. Their lamentations cannot cease because of the lawless deeds being done on the earth. The prayers of the dying were piling up at heaven's gate, and God's answer was the flood, not just as punishment for human sin, as a hard reset on a world that had been broken by something humanity never asked for and could not stop. Think about Noah for a second in this context. He is not just a man building a boat because people were sinful. He is a man being pulled out of a world where things that should not exist were walking on earth, where the food is gone, where the violence has no limit, where the earth itself is screaming. The flood was not the beginning of the story. It was the ending of one that had already gone corrupted. And the Book of Enoch is the only ancient text that explains exactly how it got there. And that brings us to what happened after the flood. Because the Nephilim died in the water. But the Book of Enoch says dying was never the end of them. The spirits of the giants shall be like clouds. They shall afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth. They shall take no food, but will hunger and thirst. And these spirits shall rise up against the children of men, because they have proceeded from them. The flood destroyed their physical bodies, but their spirits had nowhere to go. They are not human souls. The human afterlife does not take them. They are not angels. They cannot return to heaven. They are stranded, disembodied, still craving the physical world they lost. The Book of Enoch says those spirits are what every culture in history has called demons. Think about that. Every demon in the New Testament, screaming, desperate, begging Jesus to let them into a pig because they need a body. The Book of Enoch says those are the ghosts of giants. Half-angel beings, stripped of the flesh they were made in. Still hungry. They had bodies once, and they never got over losing them. That is why they want to possess living bodies. That is also why they are drawn to flesh. They had bodies once, and they remember. But to understand this book more, you need to understand the one man that it's named after. The man whose eyes were opened. The man God chose before any of this could be stopped. Most people have read Genesis and completely blown past Enoch. And honestly, I understand it. Genesis chapter 5 is a death list. 10 generations of patriarchs. Impossibly long lives. Every single one dies. Just look at Adam. He lived until the age of 930 years old. And then he died. Then you get to Seth. He lived 912 years old, and then he died. And Methuselah, the oldest human ever recorded, he died at age 962. The whole chapter is the same rhythm, over and over. He lived. He had children. And he died. 10 generations. Every patriarch. Same ending. And then you get to Enoch. And then it stops completely. And it says in Genesis 5:24, just one sentence. Enoch walked with God. And then he was no more, because God took him. No death. God just took him. Now look at that again. Enoch only lived 365 years. In a list where everyone else is hitting 700, almost 1,000 years old, Enoch's 365 years looks short. And that number 365, it is the exact number of days in a solar year. Ancient readers did not think that was accidental. They believed his life was measured by the heavens themselves. But the real question is, why did God choose him? Out of every person alive, why does God take this one man? The Book of Enoch says it plainly. It calls him a righteous man whose eyes were opened by God. Not educated. Not born into a priestly family. His eyes were opened. Meaning, Enoch could see what no one else on earth could see. He could see what was actually happening. And what he saw was a catastrophe already in motion. Something that had started above the earth. Something the rest of the world couldn't even perceive. Most people read Genesis chapter 6 and don't even realize how strange it is. Look at what it actually says. The sons of God saw that the daughters of man were beautiful, and they took them as wives. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days. That is literally all it says. Sons of God, daughters of man, giants. And then the next sentence was Noah building the ark. No background, no explanation. Genesis just drops it and moves on. The Book of Enoch doesn't move on. The first 36 chapters, called the Book of the Watchers, it picks up right there and explains exactly what happened. The sons of God in Genesis are the Watchers. When people hear the word angel, they picture something peaceful. A messenger, a gentle being of light. That is not what the Watchers were. The Book of the Watchers describes them as something much more serious. Senior celestial beings. Powerful. Ancient. They had stood directly in God's presence. They understood divine order better than any human ever could. And their assigned role was specific, watch over humanity from above. That was the entire job. There were 200 of them watching and stationed above the earth. But they were watching a little too closely. Led by the one named Semyaza. The text says Semyaza looked down at the women walking on earth. And he said to the other watchers, I want to go down and take wives from the daughters of men. Who is with me? But then he hesitated. He was afraid of being the only one punished. He said, I fear that you will not agree to do this, and I alone will have to pay the penalty for a great sin. Read that carefully. The leader of 200 supernatural beings was afraid his crew would abandon him. He was afraid of being left holding the blame alone. So they made a pact, all 200 of them, a mutual oath bound by a curse. If any one of them walked away, that person carried the full weight alone. No turning back. These were not beings acting out of ignorance. They understood divine order. They had lived inside it their entire existence. They knew exactly what this oath meant. And they made it anyway. They came down on a mountain called Mount Hermon. It's a real place. On the border of modern Syria, Lebanon, and Israel. You can find it on a map right now. But what does the name Hermon really mean? In Hebrew it comes from the word Herem, meaning a thing devoted to destruction. A curse. The mountain where 200 angels swore their oath to abandon heaven is literally named the Mountain of the Curse. The land itself carries the memory of what happened there. They took wives. They had children. And from the moment they landed, they started teaching, passing down knowledge that was never meant to reach human hands. Here's what separates the Book of Enoch from everything else. It doesn't just say, the fallen angels came down and taught humanity bad things. It names them, individual names, and it tells you exactly what each one taught. By the time I finish listing them, you're going to look at the world differently. Azazel, the worst one, the one God personally blamed for everything. He taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and body armor. He showed them how to pull metal from the earth and forge it into weapons. He taught women about cosmetics, eye coloring, dyes, precious stones, ornamentation, and the art of seduction through appearance. God's verdict on him later. The whole earth has been corrupted through the works that Azazel taught. To him attribute all sin. Not just some sin. All sin, placed on one angel who taught men to forge blades and women to wear makeup. Semyaza, the leader of the 200, taught enchantments and root cutting. He was using plants, herbs, and roots for potions, poisons, and magical ritual. This is the oldest recorded origin of what people would later call witchcraft. Penemue, quietly the most dangerous one on the list. He taught the children of men the bitter and the sweet and the secrets of wisdom. All the spirits who lead men astray were born from his teaching. He taught humanity to write, and the Book of Enoch says that was the most corrupting gift of all. Because once knowledge is written down, it cannot be taken back. Every spell, every technique, every forbidden method, recorded, preserved, passed to every generation after. Writing didn't only preserve wisdom, it preserved corruption. Kasdaye taught the knowledge of disease and how to turn it into a curse. Medicine and poison from the same hand. The same understanding, used to heal or to destroy, depending on who is holding it. Armaros taught how to break enchantments, the other side of sorcery. Semyaza taught how to cast spells. Armaros taught how to undo them. Both sides of the same dark knowledge, handed to humanity at the same time. Baraqijal taught astrology, reading the stars to predict events on Earth. Azazel taught cloud reading, divination through weather and the sky. Azazel taught the signs of the sun, solar mysticism, and seasonal ritual. Serial taught the course of the moon, lunar cycles for agriculture, ritual, and the occult. Kokabiel taught the knowledge of the constellations, celestial mapping, and star worship. Now look at that entire list. Weapons, witchcraft, spellbreaking, astrology, constellations, weather divination, earth signs, solar ritual, lunar cycles, writing, medicine twisted into poison. That is the origin story of every dark thing humanity ever learned. Every war that was fought with a sword. Azazel gave us the sword. Every occult and tradition, every curse, every coven, that was Semyaza, Armaros, and Kasdaye. Every horoscope, every astrology column you've ever scrolled past, that was Baraqijal and Kokabiel. The Book of Enoch is not saying humanity discovered these things. It is saying they were given to us, by beings who were not supposed to give them. They gave it to us before we were ready to have them. The Book of Enoch does not make you guess what happens next. It tells you. The weapons that Azazel taught humans to make, the humans immediately started using them on each other. They started using them in wars. Violence, bloodshed that hadn't existed before. And the cosmetics and ornamentation. It made the seduction and lust spread everywhere. The moment women had tools to enhance their appearance, and men had weapons to take what they wanted, everything went downhill. When people started using astrology and reading of signs, those people stopped turning to God for direction. They read the sky instead. They trusted patterns in the stars more than the one who made them. The enchantments and sorcery, people were casting spells on their neighbors, slipping potions to their enemies, using magic to control, manipulate, and destroy each other. And the writing that Penemue gave them, all of it got written down. Every secret, every method, every dark technique, preserved, passed on, impossible to take back. In 1 Enoch 9, the archangels go before God and say, "The whole earth has been filled with blood and unrighteousness. The souls of the dead are crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven. Their lamentations have ascended and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds being done upon the earth." Heaven was receiving screams from people who had no way to stop what was happening to them, and now God had seen enough. The watchers know what is coming. They can feel it, but they cannot approach God. These were beings who had literally stood in the divine presence. And now, because of what they chose, they cannot lift their eyes toward heaven. The door is shut. The Book of the Watchers is specific about this. The fallen angels are trembling. Not the kind of fear that fades. The kind that sets in when you understand. There is nothing you can do to undo what you have done. So they go looking for someone who can still walk through that door. The Watchers came to Enoch. A human man. A mortal. No divine rank. No supernatural power of his own. Just a man whose eyes were opened by God. And these 200 fallen angels, ancient, powerful beings who had defied the order of heaven, came to him trembling. They begged him to write a petition. A formal written plea for forgiveness, to carry before the throne of God on their behalf, because they couldn't do it themselves. Their sin had cut them off from direct access, so they needed a human, a righteous human, to to stand in the gap between them and God. That is one of the most extraordinary moments in ancient religious literature. Angels asking a man to intercede for them. Enoch wrote the petition. He took their plea and put it down in writing. Then he went to the waters of Dan, near Mount Hermon itself, the very mountain where the oath was sworn. And he read it out loud. And that is when the vision came. The Book of the Watchers describes exactly what he saw. Clouds began to move around him. Stars flashed. Lightning split the sky. Winds caught him up and carried him forward. He was moving, taken somewhere he had never been. He came to a wall built of white marble, surrounded by tongues of fire. Inside, a house of crystal. The ceiling looked like stars. The floor was fire. And beyond that, another house, greater than the first, built entirely of flames. Its floor was fire. Its ceiling was lightning. And on a throne inside that house, a throne so high it disappeared into the ceiling, sat the presence of God. Enoch fell on his face. He couldn't stand. He couldn't speak, and then God called to him. And he gave him a message to bring back. And it was not what the Watchers were hoping for. God said, "Go say to the Watchers who sent you to intercede, you were sent to watch over humans. Why are humans interceding for you? Why did you leave the high and holy eternal heaven? Why did you lie with women and make yourselves unclean? You were spiritual, holy, eternal. You had no need of wives. That was given to mortal men, so their kind would not die out. You had eternity. You had heaven. You had everything. And you abandoned it." Then God handed Enoch the sentence to deliver. And the sentence was, "You will have no peace, no forgiveness of sin. You will watch your sons destroy each other. You will watch everything you created tear itself apart. You will beg for mercy through all the days of eternity. But mercy you will never receive." Enoch came back from the vision. He went to find the Watchers. He found them gathered together, weeping, trembling, faces turned down toward the ground. These were beings who had existed before the mountains were shaped, who had stood in the actual presence of God, and they were shaking. Enoch stood in front of them and read the sentence. Every charge, every consequence, every word. Not one of them argued. Not one spoke in their own defense. There was nothing to say. They had made that oath with full knowledge of what it meant. And now the accounting had arrived. Then God gave the archangels their orders. God told Raphael to bind Azazel's hand and foot, and throw him into the desert of Dudiel. Cover his face with sharp and jagged rocks. Let there be no light where he lies. Hold him there until the day of judgment. Then God told Gabriel, "Go to the Nephilim. Do not destroy them directly. Turn them against each other. Let the destruction they brought on the earth come back on themselves. Michael, bind Semyaza and every watcher with him. Seal them beneath the earth. 70 generations. Total darkness. Until the great judgment. Uriel, go to Noah. Tell him the flood is coming. He is the only one who needs to know. The Watchers are bound beneath the earth. Azazel, he was buried under rocks in a desert. His face covered, with no light, waiting for the fire that has no end. And the Nephilim, they destroyed each other. But their spirits, the Book of Enoch says, they are still here. Still in the world. Still looking for somewhere to go. The flood came, and the world was wiped clean. And Enoch, the man whose eyes were opened by God, and he was the man who warned his son Methuselah, who prepared his great-grandson Noah, was taken before any of it arrived. Not death. Just taken. His work was done, and his book was left behind.